All right, so in this video, we're going to be talking about survey design. Now, there's two questions at the top here. It says school uniforms should not be required, agree or disagree, and standardized dress can promote a productive school environment, agree or disagree. So these questions show that the design of a survey can influence the results. Questions should be designed to be neutral and to allow the accurate recording of the opinions or facts given by the participants. And for example, the uniform question could be reworded as the following. I'm in favor of school uniforms for high school students. Strongly agree, no opinion, disagree, or strongly disagree. Now, this is an example of what's called a closed question. Okay, so this is a closed question because the participants are limited in their response. So the benefit of a closed question is that it's usually easier and cheaper to analyze, and you can usually just have a computer do it for you. Meanwhile, open questions, okay, allow the participants to give more detailed responses. So they're not restricted just to strongly agree, no opinion, disagree, or strongly disagree. They can write in whatever they want. The disadvantage to this is that it's usually more labor intensive and more expensive to produce. So more labor intensive, more expensive. Now, what they want us to do is reword the school uniform question so that it is an open question. So instead of having just these 5 possible responses, we want to make it so that anybody can respond with whatever they want. So a way that we can do this is describe your opinions about school uniforms for high school students. So describe your opinions about school uniforms for high school students. So you can have a ton of different responses for this. The only downside is that you're going to have to, chances are you're more than likely going to have to go through and manually read each of these. You can't just have a computer choose or analyze it for you. Now it says, because the design of a survey is so important for capturing the information needed accurately, pilot surveys, remember pilot surveys are tiny, small mini versions of a survey. It says pilot surveys are often conducted. A pilot survey is used when a small number of people and then analyzed to look for the following. So they're looking for question ambiguity, other data collection problems, leading questions, or too many people choosing other or no opinion. The following questions can be worded more effectively. Describe the question's problem and what effect the problem could have on the results. Then come up with more effective wording for the question. Provide a closed question and an open question. So each one of these problems has something wrong with it. And what we want to do is we want to identify that, and then we want to rewrite it as a closed question and an open. So just as a little footnote, C will mean closed, O will mean open. So it says, I can always talk to my parents about my problems, true or false? Well, the way it is worded is that it's saying you are always going to be able to talk to your parents about your problems. More than likely, people are never going to be falling into the camp of always being able to or never being able to. So always and never are usually very strong words that you should avoid when writing questions, unless it's necessary. So what I'm going to say is that people rarely commit to always or never. And will usually select false in that case. And because of this, it'll lead to inaccurate results. Okay. So a way that we can fix this, we can have a closed question. A closed would be, I talk to my parents about my problems. And you can have people respond by circling either always, usually, sometimes, rarely, or never. So it's still a closed question like the original, but you're giving people more options to choose from. It's not just an always or never type thing. And then another thing you could do is you could do an open question. So an open way, or a way you can write this as an open question, you could say, describe your relationship with your parents. And if you want to be more specific towards the main question, you can say, do you talk to them about your problems? Okay. All right, so we'll do one more together. It says, teachers and students like the new school schedule. So something that you should probably avoid doing whenever you're making a question is clumping two types of people or two groups of people together, because those two groups might have differing opinions. And in this case, they're grouping together teachers and students. It's saying teachers and students like the new school schedule, true or false. You might have students love it and teachers hate it, or teachers love it and students hate it. So something you should do, it says you should have separate questions for teachers and students. Okay, and if you want to make a closed question, you could say, I like the new schedule. You can have agree, somewhat agree, neutral, somewhat disagree, or disagree. And then if you want an open question, you could say, describe your feelings about the new school schedule. And then that one's more open, so that way they can answer however they feel. All right, now, when designing a survey or an observation instrument, the researcher must also consider how the data will be collected. So not just what you are asking, but how are you collecting it. So the following are some options. Option A is a face-to-face interviewer asks questions and records the answers of the participants on paper or on electronic recording. Now, something to note is that face-to-face interviews are usually more successful than phone interviews, and the reason is because they can also ask follow-up questions. Usually you might have a main question, but then a follow-up question might follow it depending on how they answer. So these are typically more expensive and sometimes can't get cooperation. So I'm going to say face-to-face are usually more successful than phone interviews. And we could say they can also ask follow-up questions. Now, these are typically more expensive and can sometimes can't get cooperation though. Now, option B says a telephone interviewer asks questions and records the answers. So this is going to be less expensive than a face-to-face and can cover larger distances, but less people have home phones nowadays, and many people refuse these. So how many times have you gotten a phone call from a random person asking you to answer some questions and you actually go through and answer them? Typically, you're going to say, no, I don't have time, thank you for calling, and then you hang up. So it's a lot less cooperation, but it's a lot quicker. You can get a lot more, you can cover more data or cover more ground by doing it on the phone. So we're going to say less expensive than face-to-face. We can cover more ground, but less people have home phones, and usually hang up. Now one more, it says a computer calls homes and records answers through key presses. This one is obviously going to be the cheapest of all of them. I mean, you aren't even having to pay someone beyond writing a program. But the downside is this probably has the worst participation rates. People don't even think twice about skipping it. You're more likely to have someone answer you face-to-face or over the phone when they know they're talking to a person versus a computer, because if a computer pops up and says, hey, can you answer this survey for me, typically people aren't even going to give it a second breath and just keep going. So we're going to say cheapest option, but least likely to get responses. Now, always bear in mind that whatever method of data collection is used, it's vitally important that the results be accurately interpreted and reported. So this includes thoroughly disclosing the methods to the reader. So if you are taking in research data, you need to make absolutely sure that your questions are worded precisely so that you don't get inaccurate data. You don't want a question that can be read two different ways and get two totally different answers depending on how the person reads it.